Hello and welcome to Curtis Stage Video Tutorials. Today's tutorial is an update on pop art, and I'm going to do this pop art tutorial. It's in CS6. It'll also work for the Creative Cloud version of Photoshop as well. And this is an update from my CS5 tutorial. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail than the CS5 tutorial. So let's get started by going and find an image for pop art. So the first thing we want to do is we want to realize what pop art is. So you can see that here's a Roy Lichtenstein image, and it's very cartoony. This has got the classic dots that Roy Lichtenstein kind of used. This came out of magazines and comic books. The dots are actually overemphasized, but they were in the if you looked closely at magazines and newspaper comic strips of the time in the 50s and 60s, you'd be able to see this pattern of dots. So Lichtenstein kind of overemphasized it. So the other thing we want to consider is Andy Warhol. Here's a classic example of his Marilyn Monroe. And so somewhere a combination between these two is kind of what we're looking at, is the Roy Lichtenstein and the Marilyn Monroe. So you can notice the bright colors, the super saturated colors. You can notice that it has kind of a cartoony feel. So first thing we want to do is find someone, a celebrity, that maybe we'd want to turn into a pop art piece. So I'm going to pick Zooey Deschanel. And what I want to do is I want to do a Google image search. And the thing is I want to have a large size image because my output file is important. If I'm going to print this, let's say at 8 by 10 inches, I want to find an image that is extremely large in megapixels that will look good in 8 by 10. So in other words, I need to have the pixel dimensions as big as I can with my image so that it matches my output file in Photoshop. So if I hover my mouse over these images, I can see their pixel dimension, and we want to have our pixel dimension somewhere in the range of 3,000, 3,500 in any one direction. The longest direction would probably be pretty good. So I found an image down in here. This is pretty nice. And the way to get a larger image is if I can go to Search Tools and pick larger than, see right here? And then I can pick higher than, let's say, 6 megapixels, and every image will be bigger than 6 megapixels that I look for. So I found this image right here, and this was a pretty good one, and I want to go to View Image. I don't want to pick this thumbnail. That's really small. I don't want to pick this image. This is a medium-size image. I actually want to go right over here to the right and click View Image, and this is going to give me the large-scale image to bring into Photoshop. So that's what I want. All I need to do is drag that to my desktop and then open that to Photoshop. I'm going to click this closed, and now I've got my image over here, and I can drag this down to my Photoshop icon and it will open up. Now remember, we don't want to create the pop art piece on this image. We actually want to open up a new canvas in Photoshop and put this image in it. So that will give us our perfect sizing. Let's say we want to do 8 by 10, which is what we're going to do today. So I'm going to go to File, New in Photoshop and create a new document that's going to be these dimensions, 8 by 10 at 200 resolution. It's okay if the background's white. Color mode can be RGB or CMYK, either one, that's fine. And I'm going to click OK. So I want to see these two tabs side by side so I can drag the Zooey Deschanel into my blank canvas. It's going to be easier for me. So I'm going to go up here to Window and Arrange, and I'm going to go to 2 up vertical. This is a nice way to see these two side by side like that. I'm going to make sure that I have the Move tool on my toolbar, and I'm going to drag the picture of Zooey into my blank canvas. And then I can close this file that came off the internet, and now I have my untitled document right here. Now you notice she's a little big here. If I want to size her down, well, first of all, I can zoom out so I can see more of the image, and Command T is transform. You can see that a lot of this image is being cut off. But that's okay because I really want kind of a headshot. But if I did want to size this down, what I would do with the transform tool on is hold Shift down and grab one of these corners, and I can shrink this image down a little bit. Okay, I'm going to just shrink it a little bit, move it into place. I think this is a good spot for her. Click the check mark and apply that transform. Now what I want to do is, I like this baby blue background that's around her. It is kind of poppy, but what I want to do is I want to get rid of that background and put my own bright color back there. We're going to create a mask to do that. Now a mask is non-destructive editing. If you've watched one of my other tutorials on masks, you'd know about this. This is better than just using the eraser tool or going in and using the magic wand tool and deleting that blue background. So the mask is a great way to non-destructively edit your images in Photoshop. I could close this file down and come back to it a year from now and re-edit my mask. And if I use an eraser tool, I can't do that. If I erase, let's say, one of her pigtails right here, and I close this file down, that's permanently erased from that image. I would have to start all over again if I need to bring that pigtail back. Okay, so let's create a mask. I'm clicked on layer 1. I go down to the bottom of the layers panel, and you can see that when I click this little icon down here, the little mask goes onto my layer next to my picture of Zooey Deschanel. Now, how do I know I'm on the mask? It's got these little brackets around it. It's white. Your mask is either white or black or gray, but primarily white or black. White will reveal what's to the left, and black will hide what's to the left. So what I want to do is I want to paint in here with a white paintbrush, and effectively it'll look like it's getting rid of the blue. Now a quick way to do this would be to select this and fill it with black. So I could use my paintbrush right here and pick a size that's good with no softness on the brush and start painting with black. So I can bring my brush tool size up by using my bracket key on my keyboard, and I can paint here, and it looks like I'm painting white, but in actuality I'm not. Look what I'm doing right here. If you look at the mask closely, you can see that I'm painting black. Black is my foreground tool on my toolbar, and it's effectively hiding the baby blue. Now I'm going to show you a quicker way to do this because this is a solid background image. So I'm going to undo a few times, and I'm going to go back to my Zooey Deschanel on this layer, and I'm going to use my magic wand tool, and I'm going to click these areas around her. And this will be able to make this mask quicker. So now I'm going to hold Shift down to add to my selection. It doesn't need to be perfect in here because, again, with the mask we can go back and re-edit later. But now I've got a real nice selection around here, and I'm going to go up to Image, or Edit, Fill, and then I'm going to go to, with this fill dialog box, I could also use my paint bucket as well, and I want to fill with black and click OK. Soon as, well, I don't want to do it there. Now that was a mistake. See, what I want to do, I'm going to Command Z undo. I filled the actual blue background with black. I don't want to do that. I want to actually fill the mask with black, thus hiding that baby blue. So Command Z undo. I've still got my marching ants, still have my selection. I want to go to the mask right here, and I'm going to go to Edit, Fill, and I want to fill that with black. There we go. Now you can look at my mask right here. What's nice is it's, instead of having to paint all that in, it filled in really quickly. Okay, so now I'm going to deselect, Command D. I can't move on if I have a selection here. So my next step is I want to strip out the color on her. So I want to click off my mask and go back to the Zooey Deschanel. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, and I'm going to go down here to Desaturate. A quick, just grayscale image. Looks grayscale. It's still RGB actually, which you'll find out in a second. Now the next step is we're gonna strip even more information out of this image. We're gonna get it to a pretty contrasty black and white graphic looking image. So I'm gonna go to Image, Adjustments, and I'm gonna go to Threshold. And this is gonna strip most of the information out of this image. And I've got this little histogram slider that will kind of, I don't want it to look like this, obviously, and I don't want it to look like that. I want to kind of still have some Zooey Deschanel information in here, so I'm going to move this slider over a little bit so that I get a little bit of her nose and her eyes, something like that, and click OK. So something like that looks really, really good. Now what I'm going to do, and this is a little thing to make our next step work better, is I'm going to add a little bit of blur to this image. So if I go up to Filter, and I go to blur, and go to Gaussian blur, I want to pick a blur that's not, I can't blur it this much, it won't work. So I want to pick a blur that's around between 2 and 5. So it's a slight blur in here. And this is going to make our dots on the next step come out better. So once I pick somewhere in the radius of, between 2 and 5, click OK. Now what I want to do is I want to send this image out of this document temporarily, because what I need to do is I need to convert this into a bitmapped image so I can add the dots, but I can't do it in here because this is an RGB image. If I go up to image mode, you can see that it's an RGB color image, and I cannot add. I got to go into bitmap mode to do this. So I'm going to send this out briefly, and this is a good tip to learn here. Because you might use this for other projects. If I hold down Control or right click on this layer right here, I'm going to send this to its own document by going to duplicate layer. And this dialog box comes up, and right here, I don't need to name it anything. When I go here to document, I want to pick new and click OK. Now you can see that a new tab opened up. So I have Untitled 1 right here, the document that I'm working on, and Untitled 3, this document right here. So this is the document that I want to kind of add the dots to and then send it back to the project we're working on. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to image mode, and I'm going to go to grayscale. This is going to get me out of the RGB color mode, but I'm only doing that temporarily. Click discard to this dialog box. Then I'm going to go to image mode, and I'm going to go to bitmap. This is going to get me to where I can put the dots. It's going to look like a screen print on here, a halftone screen print. So I'm going to go to image, bitmap, and flatten layers. It's going to ask me what settings do I want to have. Well, right here, this is matching my output and my resolution, so that's good. But right here, the method, I want to use halftone screen, and click OK. Now, right in here, this is where I'm going to create my dots. So a good setting for an 8x10 image is around 30 frequency and about 10 for the angle. And if it doesn't look right, and I want to click, by the way, I want to click round to make the dots, but you see there's a lot of different shapes in here. If it doesn't work right, you can just undo this and redo these settings to different numbers in here. You could try frequency lower, maybe 20. So I'm going to click OK, and if I look closely, these dots look pretty good. They look like this was printed in an old magazine or a newspaper. Okay, so again, if I didn't like these dots, if they're too big or too small, I can Command Z and undo just to show you how to do it, and I have to go back and do this again. So image mode, bitmap, just kind of do that again. Click that, it remembers your last setting, so that's okay. And let's say I want to go in here and go to 10. I'll show you what the big dots kind of look like. That's a little too big there. So Command Z, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back and redo my settings that I like. So I'm going to go up here to image, mode, bitmap, click OK to this. Now you've seen it a couple times. Now I'm going to go back here for this, frequency 30. I liked that size. Click OK. And these are, they're not huge dots, but they're also not too small. We can still see them. Okay, now I need to send this back to the document that I was working on, which is called Untitled 1. Probably a good idea to save this the real document that we want here real quick so I can send it back to that one. So I'm going to go to File, Save As. I'm just going to save this on my desktop as pop art. It needs to be a PSD file, a Photoshop document. So I'm going to click Save. Click OK. So now I'm going to go back to the Untitled one that I made my dots in, and I'm going to go to the same. I'm going to retrace my steps. So I'm going to go to Image, Mode, Grayscale, click OK to that dialog box. Then I'm going to need to get back to RGB, because the only way I can bring it back to my pop art piece that I'm working on is for this to be an RGB piece. So good, it doesn't look like any color went in there, but now it's available to have color information. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on my background layer now, hold down Control, duplicate layer, and I don't want to send this to a new document or the document that's in Untitled 3. I want to send it back to popart.psd, the file I just saved. Click OK. And now I can get rid of this document, this Untitled 3 dots document, and I can go back, don't save, that's fine. I can go back to my pop art, and there it is. Now I have my dots layer, zoom in, inside my project. And I'm going to rename this dots up top so I know what it is. Okay. That's good. So perfect. So now what I want to do is I want to add a background color to this and start adding color in her face. Remember, we want this to kind of look like that Marilyn Monroe that Warhol did. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a background color. So I'm going to click on the layer 1 and add a solid color down here at the bottom of my layers palette. See this little symbol with the half circle? We're going to be using it a lot. I'm going to add a solid color. So when this dialog box comes up, you'll see that I've got a possibility of lots of different colors. So I'm going to go down here and pick a color. I'm going to pick this kind of purple magenta color. Now, I've added this solid color, but I don't see it yet that means that I have to go back up to the dots layer and I have to change its blend mode to knock out this white, because this white is here, right? And I want to knock this out. Well, that's easy with a blend mode. My blend modes are located right up here where it says normal. And if I go to this area right here will knock out any whites in an image. This area will knock out any blacks in an image. So I'm going to go to multiply, and that will knock out any whites, right? So if I go back to normal, you'll see there's white in her face and white in the background, white in her jacket. And if I go to the blend mode of multiply, it's going to knock out any whites. So that means that I can see through now to the purple. So it almost kind of acts like a mask in a way. So if and by the way, if I want to change this background color, I can double click, and if I want to change it, I can. So that something like that. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to now start, well, I don't want this blue everywhere. I don't want it to be on her face. I want to actually put other colors on her face. So I can add another one of these color layers. Let me just show you how I do that. If I go down in here, I'm going to go to add solid color, and this is where, let's say I want to add pink or red lips right down in here. Well, you can see that red is covering over the whole thing. That's kind of a pain in the butt. That's because I have a white mask on this color solid. So if I double click this in CS6 and the Creative Cloud, I'm going to get a properties panel that's going to show me my mask. And I can edit my mask with this properties panel. What I want to do is I want to take this whole mask and turn it black. So with the property panel, I click invert, and now it's black. And then if I paint with white with my paintbrush, so I'm going to go to my paintbrush, pick a brush here, just a regular brush, bring it size down, but I can size it on my canvas here in a second. And then I want to switch to white. Now I can paint in the lips. So watch how I switch to white, right over here. This little button right here, I can switch to white foreground color, and I'd rather paint in her red lips, like that. I'm just kind of doing this quick so you can see, but there we go. Looks a little messy. She's messed up with her lipstick. But you can see my mask right here has a little bit of red in the mask, and that's where the red is from her lips. Now, if I don't like this, if I messed up, I can easily switch back and forth between my white and black and my mask. So I'm going to press X on my keyboard, right, and it'll switch right here. So if I press X, it'll switch back and forth between white and black. So black hides and white reveals. So if I paint with black, I can go clean up around her lips. I can zoom in, Command plus, and I can clean up anywhere if I wasn't getting it right. So just kind of letting you know you can do that. So that's the great thing about the mask. It's not erasing. So I can go back in and size my brush bigger or smaller, and I can fix any mistakes that I made. Okay, that's pretty cool. Now, if I wanted to add another color for her eyes, let's say, or her face, then I can do that. Now, one thing that I want to let you know about that's pretty cool is I want to make it so that when I paint in here, nothing goes outside her head and into this background area that's baby blue. So for instance, let me just add another color down in here, another color solid. If I go down to color solid and I add, let's say, like a yellow, go in here and add a yellow, and I inverse this. So I double click or click on my mask, and now that I've got my properties panel open, if you don't have it open again, you can double click and invert. Now I can paint with yellow. So I switch my brush to white, and I can paint with yellow. So let's say I wanted to have her eyes yellow, right? So that's pretty cool. So there we go. But let's say, just to show you what I'm going to do next, let's say that I made my brush really big and I was painting her face yellow, or her hand yellow, or her face yellow. Let's just do her neck or her face. And I go out of here. Ooh, I don't want that yellow to go out here. I just want it to stay, let's say, on her face and ear. Notice it's not going in the black, because the black is on the topmost layer. It's above this. So the black over here in the dots layer, my color's never going to go into that. But I don't want it to go out of bounds out here. So there's a great way to fix that. Let me show you. If I go down to my original layer that I created my mask with, and I select this, I need a selection of Zoe, actually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this original mask. I'm going to hold down Command on this mask and get the marching ants. Then what I'm going to do is create a new layer, and I'm going to call this layer white mask. So it's kind of like a white mask layer. So I'm going to create a white mask, and I'm going to fill this layer with white. So I'm going to go to Edit, Fill with White. Okay, pretty cool. Now what I want to do is I want to put this above my background baby blue, right? Command D, deselect, by the way. I don't want my marching ants anymore. I'm going to put this above my background. So this background back here, I need this white mask to go above the background, but it needs to be below my colors that I'm painting on Zoe. So what I want to do now is I want to create what's called a clipping path so that these two colors look at this layer below them and say, don't go outside of the white. Don't go into the transparency. Stay within the white here. So it's kind of creating a double mask thing going on here. To get that clipping path, all I have to do is click between the two layers and hold down Option. And do you see this little kind of symbol that pops out with the arrow that points down? If I click that, notice how it indents the red. Now the red was just on the lip, so you're not going to be able to tell anything here. But watch when I do this to the yellow. Hold down Option, click between the layer, and it's going to point down to the white mask, and look at that. My yellow now is not going to go out of bounds into the blue, no matter how much I paint. So I'm going to click back on my mask right here to paint, and I'm going to get, white will reveal yellow. So if I click here and I go all over and I want her face to be yellow, let's say, look at how I'm painting out into the blue. In fact, my mask, you can see it's going out of bounds. I'm painting outside, but it's never going to go out into that area. So it's pretty nice. So it never will go out here. I'm painting right now, but it's not going out there. Pretty cool. Let me add another color. Now, if I've got this crazy mask right here for yellow, but I want the jacket to not be yellow. It's okay that the yellow is going in there, because when I create another color solid and put it on top of it, so I'm going to go up here to color solid and create another color here. Let's say I'm going to go to a green, and what do? Look, it's covering over the whole thing. So what I need to do first is click right here on the mask, double click it, bring up the properties panel if it's not already open, go to invert. So now I don't see the green, but I can paint with the green. So if I go here and I start painting with the green, perfect. Uh-oh, I'm going out of bounds. I don't want to do that. See how it's going out of bounds there? So what do I need to do? I need to make sure this is indented like the other two, making a clipping path. So I hold my Option key down, and that indents. The little arrows point down to that white mask. And now look at the green is not going to go outside into the baby blue. This is pretty cool. So now I can paint her green jacket here and not worry about it going out. Look, I'm kind of getting between, and it's not going to go out into this baby blue. No matter what I do out here, it's not going to go outside this. So pretty cool. Again, I can make my brush bigger or smaller using the bracket tool on my keyboard, so I can get in here and paint and get more specific. All right, so that gives you a good idea. Oh, by the way, this looks, before we stop, so hold on, I lost my red lips. Look at this. Where did the red lips go? They're on a layer below these two masks, and these two masks are covering over this mask. So the layer order matters. So I bring the red up, because it's just got this little mask right here, and it was getting overpowered by these two masks. So if I bring it up and change their layer stack order here, look at how the red lips come up to the top. All right, so that'll do it for this tutorial on pop art in CS6 and the Creative Cloud. Once again, this was a Curtis Stage video tutorial. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.